My name is Michaela Crimmins, and I'm a program manager with the URI Foundation Alumni Engagement. On behalf of the URI FAE and the Women's Leadership Council, we welcome you to today's event, Networking Fearlessly You. The Women's Leadership Council has been celebrating Women's History Month with an inspirational series of alumni presentations on leadership, global citizenship, networking, and more, and this is the last session to wrap up the series. We are so thrilled to welcome Delia Rodriguez-Masjoan as our speaker today to discuss networking. We are also excited to have Julie Kampf, class of 1983, who is a member of the Women's Leadership Council and is on the membership committee, act as our moderator for the event. And we have Denise Hempe, class of 91, and also vice chair on the Women's Leadership Council, act as our facilitator for Q&A. Like I said, this call is being recorded. Additionally, we will be taking audience question and answer at the end of the program. If you have any questions for our speaker, you can type it into the Q&A box in the future at any time during the program, and we will cover it after the discussion. We just ask that everyone mute themselves during the call. And at this time, I'd like to pass it to Julie. Thanks, Julie.
Hi, Michaela. Thanks so much, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Gosh, when you say 1983, it sounds like so long ago. It's hard to believe. URI was one of the greatest times of my life, so it's wonderful to be here with all of you. We're excited to have Delia here today to talk about networking, and just, very briefly, so I've been at this networking thing for a very long time, as I'm sure most of us have been, and I think there's some really good definitions to what networking is and what networking isn't. So we want to make sure that we're going to get to a lot of those points today. And I hope that everybody will take away, at least some pearl of wisdom, because at the end of the day, we can all do a better job every day of building our networks, and which ultimately obviously leads us to tremendous success in what we're doing. So just to kind of jump in, Delia, are you there?
I'm here. Hi.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, say hello to everybody. Okay, great. So Delia, I'm going to start in a sort of an interesting way and just kind of ask you, in its most fundamental definition, what do you consider to be networking? What do you consider not to be networking?
That's a great question, because I started to think about my presentation today and what networking meant, and really to look back in my life, both personally and professionally, and the things that I've done over the years. And before I respond, I wanted to thank the URI Women's Leadership Council for inviting me to speak here today. And I'm also really excited because I see some friends here today that I consider part of my networks and people that I've met, and some of the recommendations I'm going to give today. But really, to me, networking is relationship building. And I see it as networking that you do many times as an organized manner when you do it for work and you have a reason to make connections business-wise. And there may be organizations that organize these events for colleagues, for professionals, and you set up a time and you go. And then there's the organic, and the one that most of us have and do on a day-to-day basis in our personal lives that are not necessarily organized. In fact, some of the women in this meeting today are women that I've met organically because they were referred to me through another friend or another colleague and things. And I have been able to build upon those relationships to either create programs, to refer to the job opportunities, or to engage them in things that I do in my work. So network to me is that building of relationships that you do where you also involve and engage your own skills and your own passion. And maybe, later on in either answering questions or in the conversation, I'll talk a little bit more about some of those skills.
That's great. Thank you. And I agree with you. Definitely a combination of organic and maybe we'll call it inorganic for an easy way to kind of refer to it. What do you consider not networking? Because there are things that people do that they consider to be important in networking, but at the end of the day may not get them exactly where they want to go. So what are some of the things that you would caution people to do as they're sort of starting to think about building their network?
Well, I think that what's important that you're genuine and you're honest about what you're trying to do. And in a sense is sometimes don't overthink things, right? When you are developing these relationships and you're connecting with people, relationship and networking is a give and take. So it's not, you're not just trying to go and get information and get others to tell you their things, but what do you have? What are the skills that you bring to the table to be able to exchange with others?
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I am great at in community engagement, especially with people that don't speak the language, and there may be an organization or an individual that's looking to connect with these communities. I may be a perfect fit for that, and I'm able to bring those talent to the table. And likewise, other people may have other talents, skills, or time that they can bring to that exchange of conversation, that exchange of resources that help build your network. What I also think about is not being so overly worried about the planning of it, and let it be more an exchange of energies, because I think that in the end, when you develop that relationship, you're able to build on things that probably you didn't even think about. And the other thing that I think about too is that when you're thinking about somebody that you want to meet, sometimes people will research them. Nowadays, you have that ability to do research, and you'll find out, for example, something you may have in common. For example, I graduated from Leadership Rhode Island in '96. And if I know that the person I'm meeting with is a graduate of Leadership Rhode Island, that may be a common thread or opportunity that allows to break down some barriers and be able to connect with that individual. So being able to identify those things that you may have in common, identify what are the skills and resources and things that you'd like to highlight that would be an advantage or a benefit for that interaction, are important things to have in mind, and have fun.
Yeah, you said two things that really kind of resonated with me, because again, I've been at this a long time myself, and I have really, done a lot of self-experimentation and figuring out what works, right? So you said something about give and take, and I love that, because in my mind, networking is not about taking, it's really about giving, and ultimately somehow it gets paid forward. I think that there's a misconception about that. Can you talk a little bit more about why it's so important for you to, as a networker, to even think about maybe giving before you even think about what you might be getting?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that that's the way that I handle my networking. First of all, because I never thought of it as networking, I always thought about it as passion. What are the things that move me? What are the things that get me out of the bed every morning and to want to do something? So, for example, I'm passionate about working with women, especially women who are in vulnerable situations and may be in need for help to resources. I am connected to individuals that may help me connect these women with
I
those
think it's
resources.
$50 for his time, and it looks like a washing machine tub. If
Okay.
Hello?
Yep. With somebody's mic went off. So my connection with the community, my connection with a Spanish radio, and my connection with folks that can help me assist the community, it helps put together this opportunity to create a program to bring food to women and children, or to elders, or to the immigrant community. because I've been doing radio for the past 24 years, I will offer that opportunity to an organization that needs to reach the community for some reason. And that act of helping out, of offering those resources, resonates with people. People remember it.
That's
And
right.
later on, will come back and say, you know, I remember when you helped me with this or that. And that's the payback. But you don't do it because, oh, if I do this, I know that I'm going to get this and back. You do it with passion, and you do it with honesty. And I think that that's how the give and take happens along the way.
You mentioned also something that really also stuck in my head, because my husband often tells me that, you know, I'm a dot connector. You mentioned something about sort of doing your research and knowing and how to break the ice. I think and I don't want to generalize, but I see it differently with women than I do with men. And I've got clients that are both, so I see it differently. When we talk about connecting dots and that icebreaker, I think there are people who always feel a little hesitant sometimes to ask for something, or to even to introduce themselves to somebody that they don't know. I think, connecting the dots is an incredibly important exercise that people need to really learn and add it into their networking sort of toolbox. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
That's great. That's a great question, because definitely I always consider myself like I'm connecting the dots. And you're right. I mean, I think I use that technique more when interacting with men than with women. But I think that because with women, you may have something in common, right? So it may be on, giving advice on a trip, or on interviewing skills, or different things that you may need. And one of the things that I've found through life, especially as living in the United States, because I grew up in Argentina, so I came here when I was 20. And one of the things that I found out later on in life, when I looked back, is that moving to a new country, you lose your history. You have no network, you have no family, no high school, no college friends, no sports teammates, nothing. So what was the thing that I had that could help me connect? And I found that people, because I didn't speak the language well, would want to help me. I found that when I was looking for childcare, people would make recommendations. So little by little, it's those skills that you learn with things that you may need on a basic level that later on can transform into things business-wise. And over time, in the beginning, especially close to like 25 years ago, that I started to get involved in different nonprofit boards, I really didn't know much how a nonprofit board ran. I didn't understand about governance or anything. But the one thing that I did know is that I was passionate about the goals and the mission of the organization. And I knew that it would be a way to meet new people. And folks that I've met in boards 25 years ago are now folks that are colleagues of mine, people that we exchange ideas and sometimes connect for different reasons. So it's always finding a way in which you can, again, exchange ideas, exchange interest, and ask for help. And one thing about help that I also find is that people are usually very generous in giving advice. People love to give advice. And if you ask somebody, can I ask you for some advice? I would say that almost 10 out of 10 times they'll say yes. It's got to be somebody who is like completely non-interested or is going through something in their own, but people like to give advice.
Sure.
And that's a way in many times in starting that conversation.
So Delia, you mentioned something that sort of is in the title of our conversation today. It's about being fearless. I mean, you came to this country when you were, 20. I mean, most of us, I can't speak for everyone on the phone, but many of us have never experienced something like that. And, the act of being able to create your life in another country, speaks to being fearless. there's a lot of, which I commend you and congratulate you on. I mean, there's just a lot of people out there that are just, they're sort of stuck and they're sort of feeling like, how do I kind of break through? You made a tremendous breakthrough, obviously, in changing your life. What do you think are some of the qualities or traits that people sort of have to be able to do that?
I think that one of it, and I keep repeating the same thing, you have to be passionate about something. And I always tell people, if you had a magic wand and you could have any opportunity to do anything, what would that be? What would be that one thing? And go for it, right? I mean, it seems really hard, but I'll give you an example. Like, I always wanted to go to Cuba. For some reason, I always wanted to go to Cuba. And years ago, I had met, through the work that I do with immigration, Cuban student who had come here to Brown, and he was writing in the Spanish newspaper, and we had met briefly and had written a story about me, kept lost touch with him. Fast forward to 2015, we reconnected again. And through him, I was able to connect with a Cuban festival and bring artists to Cuba. And I felt that, like, wow, this is great. So after meeting people there, back and forth, some of them ended up moving to the United States. I now today have friends that are considered my family, who are the dean of the University of Arts in Cuba, who, whenever I want to produce either a theater production or exhibit or something, open up the doors to me, when for a lot of people, just going to Cuba nowadays is not that easy. So, it starts with this little idea, this little dream, that you make connections that may have been a while ago, and you figure out a way to move forward. And like that, I have many examples. It's, even starting the radio show, I had no idea. I was not a journalist. I'd never do any kind of radio or anything, but a lot of the work that I was doing was educating the immigrant community about becoming a citizen. So when they asked me if I would, host a couple of shows, I said, I have no idea. They're like, just be yourself. And that turned into a 23-year show that I've been doing in the Spanish radio and connecting with the community. So sometimes is being fearless, is like stepping out of the box. It's like trying new things. It's being able to figure out that you do have skills and you do have talents. And if you're asked to participate in something, go ahead, enjoy the time, enjoy the moment, because you never know what that will bring you in the future, what connections and what other opportunities for meeting people and networking and doing different work.
So the fearless part, sort of just elaborate a little bit further for others that are sort of thinking like, I sometimes think maybe, and I think we have, our audience is probably a very wide and diverse group of people, some who are more, let's say, seasoned in their work life, maybe some are just, still in school, but at any age, some people could be hesitant. What do you find are some of the synonymous traits in people that are great networkers? I mean, if you had to kind of bullet them out a little bit so that somebody could identify with those kinds of things, what would you say?
I would say it's people who are passionate about what they do. They are not as much worried about what other people think, because I think sometimes people feel like, well, how can I go and talk to this person that's, in this position or whatever. It's people who are like, I'm going to go out. What can I lose? People who are willing to give time and advice when asked. I always say that in a lot of the work that we do, being able to provide a time, treasure, or talent are important ways to engage in different things that we do. So those are people. So I feel that if you're willing to do that, give time, give your talent, in your treasure. Your treasure may mean that you're connected to individuals that can provide resources or funding for programs or activities that you're involved in, or that the individuals that you're connecting with are involved in, is a great way. And many times is people who like to explore new things, right? So it's not just saying you have to be outgoing or whatever, because really they're great networks who are very shy that have been able to develop that ability to feel a little bit uncomfortable, but knowing that in the end, those networks, those people that you meet along the way are open for many opportunities to exchange ideas and programs and stuff. And I think too that somebody that's successful is also somebody who's networking for a cause more than for a personal reason. So when you're networking to help others, to support organizations, to support the community, I always find that it's much easier than if I'm trying to, I don't know if you ever hear people say, you know, I can help everybody else with their issues, but when it's for me, I have a hard time asking. So I think that it's people who are able to network for a cause, to help others.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, and you actually kind of opened up the door for one of my next questions a little further down the list. But you said when you have a hard time asking when it's for you. I think, and please, as long as I'm sitting on this side of the screen, nobody can throw tomatoes at me. But I think that it is women typically don't like to ask for things for themselves. I watch a lot of men in my business life, and they're very easy about how they ask one another for, I'd like to do business with this person. Can you connect me? I'd like to do this. And I hear a lot of what you're saying is relative to cause. But I think there are probably a number of people on the phone that are actually in business, may not be as connected to, let's say, a cause, and they want to meet somebody, but they're just sort of afraid to do that, right? So why do you think, and if you may or may not agree with me, but why do you think that women are typically more hesitant to ask for themselves than men are? What do you think?
And absolutely, that's a great question. And you know, that's a lot of the conversations that we have in my group of women, and a lot of Latinas. You know, we have also, for example, you know, I ran for office in '96 and I was 30 years old and I had to raise money. And I always thought, like, how can people give me money? Why would people give me money? Well, I learned that it's not about me. It's about the office that I would represent when running. The same thing in networking or in business or in asking. You learn how to ask for things in a way that it's not directly personal, but it does benefit you in a way, like you were talking about, like business. Or, for example, I may be looking for a job, and the first thing I may think about, well, I don't want people to know about it, so I'm just going to be very quiet. I don't want to be denied. Whereas I feel we need to be more out there, letting people know that we're looking for a job, that we're looking for opportunities, we're looking for career change, and be able to talk about it. I think that the reason why a lot of women, and I'm going to talk more about Latinas, is that we feel that, you know, our culture and our communities don't value women who are that much outspoken and leaders and strong, because you're leaving behind, or you're not taking care of your children or your family or your siblings, or, you know, the things that culturally you're supposed to do, right? You're not supposed to be outspoken. You're supposed to be submissive. So it is very challenging for Latinas to get to that point to say, wait a minute, let's stop this stereotype of Latinas, because we can be assertive, we can be outspoken, we can be out there, and networking and meeting people and learning. I think that one of the things that I learned is that when you ask, the worst that can happen is that somebody will say no. But many times what happens is that it's not necessarily a no, it's maybe not this, but how about this? So it's always opening up opportunities.
So just to build on that for a second, do you think that women are, and I can't speak for the Latina community as well as I can just, people in general, so this is great insight, but do you feel like maybe, when you say somebody may say no, or not now, or maybe this, or, do you think that, how do you take the feeling of rejection out of the mix, right? Because look, you're asking for something, you may not get it. So how do you protect yourself? Because I think that's what holds a lot of women back, is the not wanting to be rejected, right? Not wanting to feel like, well, I asked for something and I didn't get what I wanted, and now so that makes me look like I'm a failure, which in fact has nothing to do with it. I'm just curious what your perspective is on that.
Oh, that's great, because I think that I founded the Latina Leadership Institute back in the early 2000s, and a lot of it was in response to that, because I was being told as I was running for office, well, maybe you should wait, this is not your time, and I would feel very discouraged, because I was believing that what they were telling me was true, right? So not only did I have that within my culture, but now the mainstream community was telling me that I had to wait. And I started to feel like, okay, what needed to happen, at least in the Latino community, was to start building this network of women that could talk about and figure out how can you navigate those situations in which you have to put yourself out there and others are telling you to wait. And how do you navigate that? And how do you prepare yourself to know that this is going to come and that you have a way to, let's say, overcome that, right? And out of the Latina Leadership Institute, today we have a Secretary of State, the first Latina Secretary of State. We have the first mayor Latina in Central Falls. We have the first president Latina in Providence City Council. We have numerous elected Latino officials in the state. And a lot of that work is coming together to talk about these things, to learn about what these challenges are and how to turn them around, to really say, okay, these are the positive things that we bring as women, as Latinas, as individuals living in this country, in this community, in these cities and states, to make an impact and work with others at the same level. And so it's really, I think, getting to know yourself and what are the positive things that you bring to the table. So when you're being told no, or that you have to wait, that you can either come back to them or find other ways to navigate other points of contact that can help you achieve what you want to achieve.
Right. So now that's great. So that's kind of one of the answers I'm really looking for, because I'm really trying to give our folks on the phone some interesting ideas. Okay, so they say everybody has a first line network of about 250 people. Today with social media, that's probably more, but the question is how do you leverage that network? And you started by saying, if you don't get the answer you're looking for, maybe there's another point of contact. I'd like to start to talk I'm going to say the word tactics, because I think it's important for people to really understand, do I have a good network? Am I able to leverage that network? Or could I do a better job? And what are specific things that I can do to enhance my network? And we'll talk about social media in a minute, but how do I really enhance that? And one of the first points is absolutely, if you don't get the answer you're looking for and there's someone else that might be able to open that door for you, that's a great
Absolutely.
tactic and solution, right? What are some of the other things that you think are really important for people who are looking to really solidify their network?
Well, I think never underestimate people, because it may be that other person that you're going to is not necessarily the direct contact that you need, but is connected to a couple of people that might have those options to connect to what you need. So it's it's again, and also looking back, I mean, many times I'm thinking about, okay, who do I know in this place or that place that can help me connect with what I need, what the program I'm working on, and develop that relationship. I think sometimes people feel that, well, I haven't talked to this person in so long, and what they're going to think if I call them now. You can't think about that, because I think in the world that we live in today, we're constantly moving, we're constantly evolving, and social media is another added layer to it. But at the same time, because of social media, we have a way to maintain those contacts over time.
Mhm.
And how you do it may have different ways of doing it, but people like to feel connected in a way. They feel that they know you because of social media, but there's what's happening to keep that connection. I personally love setting up coffee dates, or like, for example, my brother opened up a restaurant in Pawtucket. It's an Argentinian empanadas. And what I do to help him promote, but also because it's a way for me to stay connected, I have empanada dates with people around different topics or relationships or whatever. And we meet at my brother's restaurant, or I may um, send them a gift card or something so they can stop by and get a couple of empanadas. So it's figuring out what are things or ideas that you can do that may be outside of the box, but that helps you keep those connections with people over time. Sometimes it's just a simple text or email or something. If you saw something on social media, a little message. I like to do a lot of that behind the scenes. I don't like to make that public. I like to make it personal. So if I know this person and I have their phone number or email, reach out because, hey, I saw you in the news, or I saw that you got a new job, or it's your birthday. You do it in a way that it's more like a personal touch. So it's not like, oh, social media, everybody's seeing that you're saying happy birthday because it reminded you, but you're keeping that connection that way. Sometimes years go by and there's some people in this room that I haven't seen in a while, but when we see each other, it's like we've been friends forever and seen each other all the time. Other people in this room I've met maybe a little over a year ago, and we constantly communicate, and I've developed a great friendship, and we haven't even met in person. Others have been my mentees in this room who I adore, and we're constantly exchanging ideas and projects and stuff. So it's different ways with different people, but it's keeping that connection, that genuine connection, and letting them know that you're thinking about them. And think about how you feel when somebody sends you a little note or a text like, hey, congrats, I just saw you. Like, even for this, I've had several people reaching out to me because they saw I was going to be speaking here. And it was people that I hadn't seen in a while. So, it's keeping that connection, that personal touch along the way. And it has different ways of doing it.
Yeah, so you're getting to the meat of what I was, what I was looking for, and I appreciate that. But I want to take it a step further, and I'm going to challenge it a little bit more, because I think it's great to have the human connection, and that's absolutely where networking begins. But there has to also be, and you started to say it, and I love what you're saying. So sometimes it's just a text, sometimes. But the really great power networkers in life, they know how to do this. And there are some tips that we can take away from that. And that is, I used to have a woman in business that used to say, sometimes you only may contact somebody once a year and send them a holiday card. Or sometimes you reach out for their birthday, which is great. And people love that you do that kind of stuff. And everybody wants to feel important. And I think all of that is perfect. I think but you have to establish some type of process in your life. If you really want to be a great networker, you have to establish some kind of a process that you follow. It can't just, you can just do it on an ad hoc basis and you can just do it when you feel like it, but that may not be the power networking that some people are looking for. So what have you done over time, and what could you recommend to people who really want to step up their game and become power networkers?
Well, like I said, I did not think of myself as a networker when I was asked to talk about this topic, but I know that I am a great networker because I always get asked to connect people and things. So personally, I think, it's keeping those relationships, no matter how back you go in your personal professional life. Everybody's potentially a connection in one way or another. I personally also look for ways to either be part of a board or look for an organization or something that I'm interested in to figure out what I can bring to the table. But it's creating those networks. I can say, there are people in today that I'm connected to today that I met when I was just starting out. Like I said, didn't know anything about boards and stuff, and they became my mentors over time. I don't know if somebody else in the room has any particular tips or ideas in how you keep or develop these relationships, but to me, I see people that in one way or another have become friends, and like I was talking earlier before, people that I can also offer something. So if I'm in a room and there's somebody that I know I've been wanting to meet because of whatever reason it is, I wanted to meet, and it may be related to my work or something, you have to have kind of like a elevator speech or something that's a way to introduce yourself of what is it, who you are and what you're doing, and what is it that brings you to want to talk to this person. And I've done that a lot, coming up to somebody and saying, hi, my name is Delia, this and that. I know I've seen you on Facebook, or I see you do this, or I'd love to learn more about this program you're working in, or I'd like to help in this way or another. I'm always personally, I am always looking for a way to help. And when I do that, it breaks down the barriers and it opens up the conversation to how we can connect in a way that later on will help me develop that relationship. Mm-hmm. And I find that that's very successful for me.
Sure.
I don't know if there are other ideas that people may have, but that personally for me is one of my strengths. Always finding a way in which I can help. And many times people don't know. They'll say, really, I don't know how you can help. Well, I'll say, I can help you fundraise. I can help you connect with a community. I can help you with an event. I can help you, for example, I connected with the Juneteenth committee that's organizing their event in June. And I reached out and I said, I'd love to help. They're like, yeah, sure, but I don't know what you can do. And I started to outline a couple of things that I could do. And that relationship is developing beautifully. Even though they knew me and what I did, they really didn't know how much I could help them with Juneteenth without anything in exchange. I don't want to be known that I'm helping with Juneteenth. I want to help them have a successful Juneteenth, raise the money that they need to raise, connect with the people that they need to connect, because they have a beautiful event that they're putting together. And I just feel that I want to be a part of it, because a lot of the work that I've been doing over the last 5 years has to do with arts and culture exchange, and how do different cultures and individuals come together, learn from each other through art and culture.
Great. I love the idea about the elevator pitch. I think all of us understand how important that is, so that we can be prepared. I think that's great. Again, we're talking about sort of being feelers. So if it's not something that, you're as comfortable with doing in person, now let's just briefly talk about social networking if we could, because I certainly think that has opened up a pathway for so many people to connect. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think I have like 10,000 first line connections on LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah.
which ultimately, you know, gets me to, you know, finding people that I maybe haven't spoken in years, and I'm sure the same for you. But there are some definite do's and don'ts of social networking and how you use these sites. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Sure. The way that I've used it, again, it's trying to figure out who is your immediate network and how true is that connection, because I think that many times it says first connection, and it's really, I mean, it's first connection because of other connections, not necessarily because it's a direct relationship with you, but there's certainly something in common. So what is that thing in common that will allow you to connect? Always being, you know, reaching out in a way that what do you have in common and what you can do to reach them. I certainly, through all social medias, I find it that it's so much easier nowadays to send a little intro and what is it, why is it that you're reaching out? There's always a reason why you're reaching out, and it's always either, again, you're either offering to support something or you're asking for advice. And I think that, like I talked about before, people love to give advice. So when you're looking for things like that, that opens up the conversation and the opportunity to continue the conversation at a later time. And LinkedIn is a great way to use that. But I've also found that with a lot of the contacts that I have personally on Facebook, and a lot of it has to do, I think, because of my community work, is that a lot of my first outreach is through the messenger, because I may not have their phone number. So it may be a way reaching out and letting them know what I'm interested in doing, to then go to the next point of being able to exchange that number and then maybe set up a meeting. Nowadays, it's all Zoom meetings and stuff. So being able to do that. Know what you're looking for too. I mean, just going out and saying, oh, let's connect for connect may sound a little strange for people, but it also doesn't hurt if there's certain things in common. I usually look for opportunities in the community for people that can either provide services or programs or resources for the community, or the community that may need to connect with those resources. So it's going out and looking for that. And for me personally, if I'm involved in raising money and connecting for speakers or connecting for different opportunities, and even at sometimes when I've been looking for contracts or looking for work, is letting people know that I'm available for conversation about potential opportunities around employment, around speaking engagement, around contract, around consulting, or whatever it is. Because sometimes when you're not out there letting people know what you're doing and what you would like to do, people don't know. And I think that that's the other thing. Don't be afraid to let people know what you're trying to do, and especially it has to do with looking for a job or an opportunity for employment or consulting and that kind of stuff. And that I learned not too long ago, because I always felt like, well, I don't want to tell people that I'm looking for work. But again, if you don't let people know, the opportunities will not be there. So don't be shy or don't be afraid, because that's part of networking. I am looking, I'm interested in a career change, if that's what you're interested in. I'm looking for more responsibilities or different responsibilities, or I found a different passion that I'd love to explore with the skills that I have. Maybe I have taken some courses that have brought me in a different direction. Maybe I want to go into a company or an organization where I have opportunity to grow. You know, whatever the reason is be able to articulate that. So when you're out there talking to people and connecting, you have a response to your interest out there to connect.
Well, I think that's probably going to be the last question I'm going to ask you. I know we have some questions from the group here, and I'm going to turn it back over to Michaela. I would just leave everybody with one piece of advice, in addition to all the great pearls that Delia has said today, that is, if you identify somebody who you think is a great networker and you look at them from afar, maybe ask them to mentor you or give you some tips on, because not everybody is fearless and not everybody has the ability to kind of put themselves out there and ask, and none of us want it. We protect ourselves. So I would just say there are people out there that can help you become better networkers. And so I really thank you for your time today. I'm going to turn it back over to Michaela and we'll answer some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you so much, Julie and Delia. That was awesome. And I think everyone appreciates hearing what you've said. I'd like to turn over to Denise, who will be facilitating Q&A.
Thank you very much. Delia, we did have a couple of questions and some individuals who shared some of their own tips. So we'll make sure that you can see everything that came through on the chat. One of the first questions came in from Audra, who wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about how an individual can identify their passions.
What I always try to do is ask people if you really had no barriers, right? You had no problem with money, no problem with time, no problem with anything. What would be the one thing that you're interested in doing, that you would love to do? And find out a way to get involved. I have done a lot of my work. I've been really passionate about working with the immigrant community over the last few years. A lot of it is because I came from another country. But I realized that there were a lot of things that I didn't know about other Latino countries and about other immigrants and about the culture in the United States. So to me, it was, how do you learn about people? And it's food, music, art, those kinds of exchange, right? So I realized that one of the things that I was always supporting had to do with things that were art and cultural related. So helping the Latino Theater Company, helping with productions, bringing artists together, supporting or promoting events, helping raise money for these things. So that's how I came to that. So it's really figuring out, every person has something that they like to do, and many times say, well, I don't have the time, or I can't for this or that. I think that there's always an opportunity to do, and to at least start exploring different experiences and people that may be doing that kind of work, so you can learn how to do it and get involved.
Thank you very much. And that can be hard when you are busy in your life. Sometimes we don't take enough time to stop and really think about, what is it that I like to do? So just taking some time, by yourself and kind of asking yourself that question. What were the things you liked to do when you were younger, when you were a teenager, when you had more time? Right. And maybe you had more money, or maybe you didn't. And maybe that's, some of it is just going back to basics. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
We had a couple of tips come in through the chat. I entered one. I know someone who's a great networker who literally takes notes after each conversation and just adds them to their Google contact. So the next time he speaks with them, he'll say, how are your boys? How's your husband? The last time we spoke, you had taken a trip X, Y, or Z. And so that's a tip that people can use to kind of keep those connections and make them very personal.
Yes. No, that's great. And I think that some people do that, but don't get bogged down so much on that. Yeah. I think that one important thing is, how did that person make you feel? And what was that one thing that you could remember about that exchange? I many times don't remember the details, but remember the experience of that conversation. And that's something that's really important, because it's more genuine. So keeping notes is super important, but that feeling of, like they always say, what people say and all this, but you'll never forget how you felt when somebody said something about you. And that's the meaning, I think, a lot behind networking too.
And another tip was personalizing your LinkedIn request, because you can, LinkedIn will give you options. You can click a button and just say, I'd like to join your network. It's much more meaningful, even if you say, Delia, I saw you speak at the URI Women's Leadership Council event. I would love to connect with you, rather than let me add you to my network. So just taking a little time to personalize it. And I think that further emphasizes your point of how you're making someone feel too, not just how someone makes you feel, but how do you want to show up for others?
Oh, and that's perfect on point, because you can tell when you get like a generic text or generic message or generic email versus a personal one. And the personal one, you're like more excited to read it and open it up and see what's it about and follow up. So that's the same effect the other way around when you're sending a personal message or connection versus a generic thing.
That's right. Was that on LinkedIn, you can actually add to your photo a tag that says open to work. When you were talking about how do you let people know, and that it's okay to let people know. I'm recently looking for work, and I had to really think about like, oh, do I really want to put that out there? And the answer is yes. At some point, you need to let people know that you're open to work, because they may assume that you're not. And it's making yourself a little vulnerable, because you may have to explain, why are you looking for work? What's happened in your life? And having your elevator speech to what you had said, and also Julie, is really important. So when you are ready to kind of put yourself out there, you have your story all ready to go.
Absolutely. And I think that's super important. And I've found sometimes when I talk to people who have recently changed jobs or got a contract or something, you're like, how did they get that? And they tell you, I've been out looking, I was talking to people, I was letting them know. Many times I was told by my mentors, let people know. So I would go to my list of contacts in my emails or in my phone or in other places and make sure that I let them, hi, I just wanted to connect with you. I haven't seen you in a while. I'd love to catch up with you and let you know that I'm currently looking for new opportunities. I'm looking for new employment. I'm looking to grow, whatever it is that you want to let them know. So that works a lot.
And Melissa says when she goes to a seminar, she tries to look at the open seats and choose a table where she doesn't know anyone. So talk about, taking that big step and being vulnerable and just being brave and being fearless, because that can be a bit overwhelming. And she also says men are great networkers. So she tries to learn from them by watching them.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great tip. And it's goes with a part of saying meeting new people and knowing also what you bring to the table. What are the things that you can talk about that you do, that you enjoy, or why you're at this particular event and stuff. Absolutely.
Yes. If there are any other questions or any tips that anyone has related to networking, feel free to enter them into the chat, and maybe while folks are doing that, I can mention I had a conversation with somebody the other day who, and it was all about networking, said, I'm kind of an introvert and it can be really challenging, right, to put myself out there. And I shared I'm an introvert as well. And one of the tips I use is if you walk into a room, and this will be after the pandemic, but you find one or two people, and introverts may tend to do better, with a smaller group of people. And so don't look at the big room, look at the small groups of people that are in the big room. And you do have to, sort of get some courage and just walk up and introduce yourself to someone. So right. I think that sort of matches what Melissa was saying as well.
Exactly. And you went there with a purpose, with a reason. sometimes it's trying to like step out of that comfort zone and say, okay, I have nothing to lose. Everybody's here for the same reason. Have something prepared that you'd like to share, and you take it to that level. And you know, you work the room, like they say, right? So you may find somebody that you end up looking at each other and just come close and you introduce yourself and you take it from there. I think the
Melissa, great
exchange of
tip.
business card. Yes, I'm reading
Yes,
that.
ask someone for their business card, and when you finish talking to them, you can write something quickly on the back that you learned about them or their lives. That's a great idea, because you can come back from seminars and have a list of people and sort of forget who did you talk to about what if you're there for a couple of days. That's a great tip.
Right. Yeah, I use now, you know, now that we have cell phones, I will use, it's easier for me to save the number on the phone that a business card, I'll probably lose it. And in the contact, I will make a note of who this person is or how I connected, so that when I see the name or I need to look, it will help me remember where I met them and have their contact.
And the last question that we have from Audra is, what gives you your strong sense of self? Fearlessness of reaching out, knowing your skills, and not getting caught up in what others think. It's a great question to end on.
Well, I think it's been a lot of trials and error over time. And, you know, having come to this country when I was so young and didn't have, you know, that family network, that school network, that, you know, I had to go out and fight for things. And when I say fight, it was like I needed to go and ask. And I, you know, when you have children and when you have needs, you can't just sit back and wait. And, you know, you start developing this thick skin. But at the same time, I've always been somebody that was curious and wanted to learn things and loved to make friends. And growing up, I played field hockey in Argentina, and we traveled the country, and I would make friends and develop pen pals with friends all over Argentina. And then we went to Spain and developed, and in all these places, I still have these friends through field hockey that I was pen pals with. So I think I always had that outgoing personality. What I had to learn how to do it as an adult in another language with different cultures, with different needs. But I think that the skills are similar. You know, meet people, you find things in common, you find what you need. And sometimes you have no other thing to do but to ask. And like I said at one point, I think that most people, when you ask for advice, are willing to give it, are willing to share, are willing to be that person that mentors you or connects to you. And if not, they wouldn't be in the business. We know the importance of networking. And I think that people who do it and enjoy it know that it's an important part of developing that. So go out, make those relationships, connect through social media nowadays before we can go back in person, and find that passion that's going to help you in more ways that you know.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for asking questions and sharing your own tips. At this point, I will turn it over to Michaela to close the session out.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Delia, Julie, and Denise. This was great. And we appreciate everyone joining today and spending your lunch hour with us. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone has an awesome day.